There is a silent force that has killed more dreams than failure ever could. A subtle whisper that infects ambition, paralyzes greatness, and convinces men and women to settle for lives they never asked for. It doesn't come with horns. It doesn't scream. It arrives disguised as reason, as logic, as caution, and worst of all, as comfort. This force is called fear, not the kind of fear that keeps you from walking into a burning building. No, I'm talking about the fear that keeps you from walking into your destiny. The fear of being seen, the fear of trying and failing, the fear of judgment, the fear of success, the fear of becoming who you were meant to be. And if you don't confront it, if you don't learn to master it, it will govern every decision you make for the rest of your life. You'll call it timing. You'll call it being realistic. You'll call it waiting for the right moment. But deep down, you'll know. It was fear all along. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times before inventing the light bulb. Do you think he wasn't afraid? Afraid he'd die a fool? Afraid he'd spend his life in darkness chasing an illusion? But here's the thing. He didn't let fear stop him. Because the dream was louder than the doubt. Because his vision outshouted his fear. And that is your first truth. Fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal. A signal that you are standing at the threshold of something powerful, something that matters. The people who change the world, they aren't fearless. They just do it anyway. So why do you obey fear like a king? Why do you kneel before it, like it owns your fate? Listen to me. You were not born to bow to fear. You were born to rise in the face of it. Every great man who built something eternal, from Carnegie to Disney to Mandela, had to walk through the fire. And when they did, they discovered something the average person never will. On the other side of fear is freedom. Let me ask you something. When did you stop trusting yourself? When did you decide that fear was smarter than your potential? Was it the moment they laughed at your idea? Was it when someone told you that people like you don't make it? Was it after you tried once and failed? Because if that's all it takes to chain you to the floor, then what were your dreams really worth? If you let fear make your decisions, you are building a prison, brick by brick, with your own two hands. And the worst part? You'll decorate the walls. You'll make it look nice. You'll call it normal life. You'll convince yourself that you never wanted more anyway. But deep down, you'll hear it. That whisper, that ache, that voice that says, there was more. There was more in you. And that voice, that's your future screaming through the silence. Fear is not a force you defeat once. It's a voice you outgrow. It's the dragon that guards the treasure. It is the final gatekeeper of every life worth living. And your sword, your only weapon, is decision, not confidence, not talent, not perfection, decision. The decision to move forward anyway, to act in spite of the tremble in your voice, the shake in your knees, the chaos in your chest. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in the presence of it. When Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. He wasn't giving you a fortune cookie. He was giving you the key to the lock. Because fear begins in thought. And thought can be changed. You are not your fear. You are the awareness behind it. You are the force that chooses whether to feed it or starve it. So the next time fear speaks, you speak louder. The next time fear says, you can't, you respond. Watch me. You show it your scars. You show it your persistence. You show it the 1,000 times you've gotten up when others stayed down. You don't argue with fear. You outwork it. You outgrow it. You outlive it. Because here's the truth. Fear only wins when you stop moving. It doesn't have to defeat you. It just has to delay you long enough that you stop trying. And that is how dreams die, not in some fiery explosion, but in slow, quiet hesitation, day after day, doubt after doubt, excuse after excuse. You blink, and 10 years are gone. You blink again, and you don't even recognize the person in the mirror. So what are you going to do? Keep running? Keep shrinking? Keep pretending that someday will magically arrive? Or are you going to rise? Because fear will never leave. But it can learn to fear you. When you become the kind of person who shows up anyway, when you stop negotiating with your small self, when you decide that your life is worth fighting for, something shifts. Fear loses its grip, not because it disappeared, but because you stopped listening. You started building. You started creating. You started acting like your future was watching. Because it is. And that is where we begin. So dare. Dare to want more. Dare to go deeper. Dare to raise your standard until fear can't breathe in your atmosphere. Because you are no longer who you were, and fear no longer has a home here. Fear no longer has a home here. You've outgrown it, outlived it, outrun the lies it used to whisper when no one else could hear. Because now you hear something else, something louder, purer, deeper. Truth. And the truth says, this life is yours to shape. No one's coming to carve it for you. No one's handing you a guarantee. But no one can stop you either. Not anymore. Because once you've stared your fear in the face and moved anyway, you become untouchable. You stop flinching. You stop asking. You lead. You lead your days. You lead your thoughts. You lead your mission. And in that leadership, fear shrinks. Not because it vanishes, but because it no longer gets a vote. You've learned the difference between fear and guidance, between resistance and intuition, between being careful and being controlled. And now you lead with something stronger. Conviction, clarity, a vision so deep it burns through the fog. Because fear is fog. That's all it ever was. Thick, dense illusion, designed to block your view of who you already are. But when you walk through it, you realize there was never anything there. Just smoke, just stories, just shadows from a past that no longer owns you. And beyond that fog, you see it. The life, the love, the fire. And it's not far away. It's here, right now. Waiting on your next decision, your next act of bravery, your next refusal to go backward. Because going back, that's not an option anymore. You've seen too much, felt too much, grown too much. You've looked your fear in the eye and kept walking. And now, you carry something different. Not ego, not arrogance. Weight. The weight of a person who knows their value. The weight of someone who has stood inside their pain and chosen purpose anyway. And the world will feel it. Some will be drawn to it. Some will resist it. But all will recognize it. Because realness leaves a mark. And when fear sees that mark, it hesitates. Because it knows you're not who you used to be. You're not the version that begged for permission. You're not the version that waited to feel ready. You're not the version that kept playing small just to be accepted by people still living in cages. Number. You're the version that broke the cage, built a door, and walked through it without looking back. And from this point forward, everything changes. You think sharper, you act quicker, you speak with power, because you've earned your voice through fire. You've earned your strength through trial. You've earned your clarity through every moment you almost gave up, but didn't. And that endurance, that is the root of every great life. It's not talent. It's not genius. It's not luck. It's refusal. The refusal to be owned by fear, to be silenced by doubt, to be paralyzed by what might go wrong, because what might go right is far more powerful. And that is what you now chase, not with desperation, but with devotion. You are devoted to the life you were born to live, devoted to becoming someone fear cannot recognize, devoted to walking a path only you were meant to walk. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it will test you. Yes, fear will try again. But every time it does, you'll smile. Because now you understand. Fear doesn't come to stop the weak. It comes to test the worthy. And you are worthy. You are worthy. Worthy of the life that's been pulling at your chest. Worthy of the vision that won't leave your mind. Worthy of the strength you haven't even tapped into yet. Fear will try to convince you otherwise. It will bring receipts from your past. It will drag stories into the room. Stories of failure, of pain, of weakness. It will lay them out like evidence and say, see, this is who you are. But you don't live there anymore. You've changed addresses. You've moved into a new identity. And that identity is not based on what happened to you. It's based on what you've chosen to become because of it. Because fear's story might be loud, but your decision is final. You've chosen growth. You've chosen courage. You've chosen truth. And truth, when chosen daily, becomes power. Not theoretical power, not motivational fluff, but real, grounded, unstoppable power. The power to move when it's uncomfortable. The power to speak when it's risky. The power to stand when others fold. The power to keep going, especially when fear begs you to stop. That's what separates those who dream from those who deliver, those who get ready from those who get started. So get started, not next year, not next week. Now, because fear has had enough of your time. It's had enough of your energy, your attention, your voice. And now you take it all back. You don't need more time to heal. You need more truth to walk. You don't need more strategies to avoid discomfort. You need more commitment to move through it. You need to stop asking, will I make it? And start declaring, I am making it. Because this is the moment where hesitation dies, where delay is no longer tolerated, where you stop dipping your toe into purpose and finally dive in. You are no longer someone flirting with their potential. You are married to it, bound to it, committed in thought, word, and action. And when fear knocks, you don't tremble. You don't answer with doubt. You answer with motion. You build, you speak, you create, you serve. Because fear's greatest enemy isn't confidence, it's consistency. Confidence can be faked, consistency cannot. Every day you show up, fear weakens. Every time you take action without asking for permission, fear retreats. And every step forward becomes a vote for your freedom, a vote for your future, a vote for who you truly are. Until one day, you wake up and realize fear isn't chasing you anymore. You've outpaced it, outworked it, outlived its usefulness. Now fear becomes a tool, a signal, not a sentence. It rises when you're about to expand. It tightens when you're nearing transformation. It flares up when your soul is about to level up. And in those moments, you don't run. You don't shrink. You smile. Because now you know. Fear only screams when you're close to something sacred. And if you're feeling it now, good. That means you're on the edge again, the edge of a decision, the edge of the next version of you. So stand there boldly. Let your knees shake. Let your hands sweat. Let your voice crack if it has to. But don't retreat, because the person you become on the other side of this moment will never be owned by fear again. They'll thank you. They'll carry the life you always wanted, and they'll remind you every day you did it. Not without fear, but without giving fear control. And that, right there, that's everything. That's everything. Not the awards, not the applause, not the perfect ending, but the moment you decided that fear would no longer write your story. The moment you stood up from the ashes of everything that tried to bury you and said, I'm still here, and I'm just getting started. Because that's when it all begins. Not when fear disappears, but when you do. When the old version of you, the one who waited, hesitated, held back, finally fades into memory. And what rises in its place? It's not someone perfect, not someone fearless, but someone real. Someone who feels it all and moves anyway. Someone who carries scars but keeps building. Someone who no longer fears falling because they've learned how to fly through the fall. That's what this journey is about. Not becoming invincible, but becoming unbreakable. Not because you're never hurt, but because you refuse to stay hurt. You refuse to stay stuck. You refuse to be ruled by a voice that has never built a single thing in your life. Because fear builds nothing. It only destroys. It destroys your ideas before they're born. It kills your joy before you've tasted it. It erodes your self-worth in slow, quiet whispers. And if you listen long enough, you start mistaking fear for truth. But it's not. It never was. The truth is, you were born with everything you need. The truth is, every storm you've survived has made you sharper. The truth is, every fear you face is a door, and you hold the key. So stop knocking, start walking, start living like you're already the person you're afraid to become. Because you are. Underneath the layers, beneath the excuses, behind the hesitation, that person is already here. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to unleash it. Let go of who the world told you to be. Let go of the expectations, the timelines, the fake humility. There is nothing humble about dimming your light to make others feel comfortable in their fear. You shine, you burn, you blaze through the darkness because people are watching, not your highlight reel, your heart. They're watching to see what you do when it's hard, when fear creeps in again, when everything says stop and something deeper in you says go. That something deeper, that's your calling. And it does not negotiate. It will wake you in the night. It will haunt you in your quiet moments. It will whisper in between your breaths. There's more in you. You can try to ignore it, try to numb it, try to distract yourself with busy work and safe decisions, but it will wait. It will follow, because it knows. You didn't come here to settle. You didn't come here to coast. You didn't come here to make it to the end safely. You came here to ignite, to stretch the limits of what's possible, to challenge the script you were handed, to walk through fire and come out made of it. And yes, it takes everything. It takes your comfort. It takes your certainty. It takes your ego. But in return, it gives you something priceless. Yourself, the real you, the one who leads, the one who loves without fear, the one who walks with power, not because they were never afraid, but because they finally stopped bowing to it. And if there's one truth fear never wanted you to realize, it's this: you were always the answer. Not the plan, not the timing, not the approval. You. You, with your wounds and your wisdom. You, with your flaws and your fire. You, with your imperfect courage and relentless heart. So rise, don't run, don't delay. Don't shrink to fit a life that was never made for your full expression. This is your season. This is your stage. This is your moment. And fear? Fear is just the echo of a past that can no longer reach you. Fear is just the echo of a past that can no longer reach you. It will try. It will rise like smoke. It will take new forms, wear new masks, speak in new tones. But now you recognize it. Now you name it. Now you face it, not with resistance, but with resolve. Because once you've walked through fear and survived, you stop fearing it. You start studying it, reading it like a map, following it like a compass, because you know it only shows up where growth is about to happen. Fear never knocks where there's nothing to protect. So if it's loud, good. You must be close to something sacred. And what's sacred now? Your truth, your voice, your future, your becoming. No more negotiating, no more pretending, no more asking fear for permission to take up space in your own life. This is your territory now, the territory of the brave, the bold, the ones who moved forward while their knees shook and their breath stuttered. Because greatness doesn't walk in with fireworks. It walks in quietly, behind the choice to keep showing up, over and over, again and again, even when no one sees, even when nothing makes sense, even when fear is screaming from the sidelines. That's what defines a leader. That's what defines a legacy. Not what you did when it was easy, but who you became when it was hard. And right now, in this very moment, you are becoming that person. Every breath, every step, every act of defiance against fear's agenda. You are proving, not to the world, but to yourself, that you were always stronger than the voices that told you to wait. You are proving that fear was never your limit, only your mirror. It showed you where to heal, where to rise, where to dig deeper. And now that you've seen it for what it is, you don't fight it anymore. You use it. You let it sharpen you. You let it stretch you. You let it become fuel, not a cage. And that changes the entire equation. Because most people spend their lives running from fear, while you've chosen to run with it, to outpace it, to outgrow it, to outlive the stories it tried to script for you. And now look at you. Not perfect, not finished, but free. Free in a way that most never experience. Not because the fear disappeared, but because you stopped needing it to. You stopped requiring safety before movement. You stopped requiring certainty before purpose. You stopped waiting for permission and started living with conviction. And that shift, that's the birth of everything real. Every movement, every breakthrough, every revolution. They all began the moment someone said, "This fear is not my ceiling, it's my signal, and I am done ignoring it." So go where it points, go where it shakes, go where your voice trembles and your pulse quickens. Because that's the path, that's the work, that's the way through. And what's on the other side? Everything you've been searching for. Not just success, not just recognition, but peace. Peace that can't be taken. Peace that isn't attached to outcomes. Peace that comes from knowing you lived with honor. That you fought for the life your soul kept whispering about, even when it was inconvenient, even when no one clapped, even when fear screamed the loudest. You moved anyway. And that is how warriors are made. That is how warriors are made. Not in comfort, not in applause, not in perfect timing or polished moments, but in fire, in silence, in the decision to stand when everything says kneel, to move forward when everything inside you says hide. This is the truth about fear. It was never here to stop you. It was here to reveal you, to show you where you've been playing small, to show you where your old identity ends, to show you where your real life begins. Fear is not your enemy. It's your mirror. And now you've looked into it, fully, clearly, and chosen not to flinch. You've rewritten the contract. You've reclaimed your name. You've become the author of your own unfolding. And now you don't chase destiny. You live it. You don't talk about the life you want. You build it breath by breath, step by step, one decision at a time. The hesitation is gone. The stalling is over. The cage is open, and you're flying. Not recklessly, not chaotically, but with clarity, with command, with the understanding that fear may always follow, but it will never lead again, because the leader now is you. Not the old you, not the conditioned you, the awakened you, the one who remembers what it feels like to trust their own fire, the one who walks into uncertainty and doesn't ask for guarantees, only direction, the one who knows that everything they want, everything they were born for, exists on the other side of discomfort, and they are willing to pay the price. You are that person now. And every time fear whispers, "You can't," you'll answer without hesitation, "I already did. I already started. I already became." And that's when fear shrinks, not because it disappeared, but because it knows it lost you. You've graduated. You've stepped into a new rhythm, one led not by fear, but by vision. One driven not by what might go wrong, but by what's too sacred to leave behind. And in that place, the place beyond fear, you discover something few ever find. Silence. Not empty silence, powerful silence. The silence of self-trust, the silence of alignment, the silence of a life finally lived without apology. That silence, it's louder than fear ever was. It speaks in actions, in legacy, in love. It says, "I chose this, I earned this, I became this." And one day, when your story is told, not by you, but by those who watched you rise, they won't talk about how fearless you were. They'll talk about how you moved in spite of it, how you kept walking through the storm, how you reached back to pull others forward, how you lit the path, not because it was easy, but because it was time. And that is your legacy. Not a life without fear, but a life that turned fear into fuel, a life that proved to yourself, to others, to the world, I was here, I was real. And fear never held the pen. You held it. And now, the page is yours. Write loudly, write boldly, write with the fire that fear could never steal. Because the truth is, you were never afraid of fear. You were afraid of your power. But now that power is awake, and nothing will ever silence it again. Look around you. Every breakthrough, every invention, every leap in human progress was made by someone who felt fear and refused to obey it. The airplane was built by two bicycle mechanics who were laughed out of every room. The telephone, the automobile, electricity, the internet, all born in the minds of those who were told it was impossible. And the people who mocked them, they vanished, forgotten by time, while the ones who faced fear changed history. You don't get remembered for staying safe. You don't get remembered for playing small. You get remembered for what you overcome. And fear is always the first opponent. So let's stop pretending it's noble to wait. Let's stop dressing up fear in fancy words like, "I'm being cautious," or "I'm not ready yet." You're never going to be ready. No one ever is. If you're waiting for fear to vanish before you start, you'll wait forever. The brave don't wait. They walk into the storm because they know inside the storm is where the real you is born. Fear sharpens you. It reveals you. It exposes your values, your priorities, your commitment. You say you want the dream. You say you want the legacy. You say you want to live without regrets. Then you better be ready to meet fear, because it guards every great thing in life. You want love. You'll fear heartbreak. You want wealth. You'll fear losing it. You want purpose. You'll fear being misunderstood. You want freedom. You'll fear responsibility. But you cannot have one without the other. The bigger the dream, the louder the fear. It is not a curse. It is confirmation that you're on the right path. So feel the fear, but keep walking. Every step you take through it, you grow. Every step you take into the unknown, your old self dies, and your real self begins to rise. Do you think Martin Luther King wasn't afraid before he stood on that podium? Do you think Rosa Parks didn't feel her heart race as she refused to move? They were terrified, and they stood anyway. That is power. Not because they were fearless, but because they were faithful. Faith is louder than fear, and your belief must be bigger than your excuses. So many of you are trapped, not because you lack opportunity, but because you've built a fortress around your comfort zone. You've mistaken routine for peace. But deep down, you're restless, because your soul knows it was not born for average. It was born for impact, for contribution, for expansion. But none of that lives inside the lines. None of that happens while you hide behind what's easy. Your purpose doesn't live in your comfort. It lives on the edge, where your fear begins and your growth explodes. The truth about fear is this: it's not the enemy. It's the invitation. The question is, are you brave enough to accept it? Because the moment you do, your life will no longer be a story of what might have been. It will become a story of what was done, in spite of fear, in spite of doubt, in spite of setbacks, silence, judgment, betrayal, failure. And that story, that's the one you were born to write. But you can't write it if you're still waiting for permission. Nobody's coming to rescue you. Nobody's going to knock on your door and hand you courage. You don't get to buy it. You don't get to borrow it. You have to build it, one terrified decision at a time. You must become the kind of person who moves anyway, because motion is what breaks fear's grip, not thinking, not analyzing, not planning endlessly. Action. Action creates clarity. Action creates confidence. Action kills the illusion that fear has power. And let me remind you, it is an illusion. Fear is a shadow. It looks big, it feels heavy, but shine a light of truth on it, and it disappears. The truth is, you've already survived every hard day. You've already overcome things you thought would break you. You are stronger than you realize. You are braver than you believe. You are more capable than your fears want you to see. But you'll never know it if you keep living in reverse. If you keep letting your past dictate your next step. Fear feeds off your memory. It replays every mistake. It magnifies every failure. And it whispers, what if it happens again? But what if it doesn't? What if this time it works? What if this time you soar? You owe yourself the chance to find out. Because the price of fear is not just the dream. It's your self-respect. Every time you back down, you tell your soul, I don't trust you. I don't believe in you. You are not worthy of this. And over time, you begin to believe it. But today, you can break that cycle. Today, you can speak to your fear and say, I hear you, but I'm not living like this anymore. Not another year, not another day, not another hour, because you've played small long enough. You've bent your back to fear long enough. It's time to rise, not perfectly, not confidently, just deliberately, with shaking hands and a clear decision. Because fear only wins when you let it choose for you. But when you choose for yourself, when you decide that your life will be bigger than your fear, that's when you begin. That's when the real story starts. That's when you stop surviving and start living. Think about the life you could be living if fear had never had a voice. Imagine the relationships you would have built, the places you would have gone, the art you would have made, the businesses you would have started, the chances you would have taken. Now imagine you're standing at the end of your life. Not a metaphor, not someday. Actually there, old, tired, finished, and you're looking back. What do you see? Do you see courage? Or do you see comfort? Do you see growth? Or do you see delay? Do you see the fire you carried all those years ago? Or do you see ashes of dreams never lit? Because here's the brutal truth most won't tell you. Fear doesn't just take your opportunities, it steals your time. And time is the one thing you can never get back. You can rebuild money. You can repair relationships. You can restart careers. But you can never rewind the clock. Every hour spent obeying fear is an hour stolen from the life you were meant to live. And that is the theft you don't even see happening until it's too late. But there's something else. Fear doesn't want you to know. Something powerful, something dangerous, something that could burn down every excuse it's ever whispered into your ear. You can choose again. You can choose a new thought, a new story, a new action. You can stand in the same storm and say, I'm not the same person I was when I entered. You are not your failures. You are not your trauma. You are not your hesitation. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become next. And if you would only believe that for one moment, you'd feel it. That crack in the wall, that shift in power, that flicker of light breaking through. Because all fear needs to survive is your agreement. It needs you to play along, to nod your head and obey. But when you stop agreeing, when you say, not anymore, that illusion begins to collapse. Fear cannot stand where truth is spoken. It cannot rule where action is taken. It cannot live in a heart that refuses to bow. And the most dangerous person in any room is the one who has faced fear and kept walking. The one who says, yes, I'm afraid, and I'm here anyway. Because fear doesn't know what to do with that kind of power. It doesn't know how to break someone who keeps getting back up. Let me tell you something you may not believe yet, but you need to hear. Your courage is already inside you. It is not something you earn. It is not something you wait for. It is already there, under the weight of your doubt, buried beneath the years of what if, chained by the lies you were told about your own limits. But it's there. And the moment you start living like it's real, your life will change, not slowly, not gradually, radically. Because when you stop being controlled by fear, you become uncontrollable. The world cannot manipulate you. The past cannot imprison you. Failure cannot define you, because you've already won the war within. And that is the real battlefield. Not the opinions, not the outcomes, not the critics or the consequences. The battlefield is inside you, and fear is the enemy that knows you best. It knows how to sound like your voice. It knows how to wear your mother's doubt, your teacher's cynicism, your past mistakes. It knows how to mimic your logic and call itself safety. But make no mistake, it is sabotage. It is the thief that breaks in through your thoughts, and the only way to stop it is to face it. Directly, deliberately, repeatedly. There is no shortcut, no way around it. You must step into it and through it. Because the only thing worse than feeling fear is letting it decide your future. And some of you, you've already handed it the keys. You've let it choose your job, your partner, your words, your limits. But today is your turning point. Today is the moment you take back the pen, because your story is not done. And this chapter, this exact moment, can be the one where everything begins to shift. But only if you decide it does. Fear doesn't need more time. It needs more silence. It needs you to stop telling your dreams. Stop thinking your vision out loud. Stop threatening to change. It needs you quiet. Because if you ever shouted loud enough, acted bold enough, moved fast enough, fear wouldn't survive the wave. So let the wave rise. Let the pressure build. Let the fear tremble for once. You've bowed to it long enough. Now it's time it bowed to you. Not because you are fearless, but because you have finally remembered who you are, and who you are is greater than anything fear has ever told you. There is a moment in every person's life when the mirror becomes unbearable, not because of how you look, but because of how long you've been hiding. And in that silence, in that stillness, you know. You know what you've been avoiding. You know what you were born for. And you know exactly what's been standing in the way. Fear. Not some monster outside you, but the one within. The fear of becoming who you truly are. Because let's be honest, it's easier to fear the fall than to commit to the climb. It's easier to fear the light than to carry its weight. It's easier to fear greatness than to be held responsible for it. But listen closely. You will never feel peace while betraying your potential. You can numb it, distract it, excuse it, delay it, but it will return every night. That whisper, that quiet unrest that says, there's more, and that more lives on the other side of your fear. That's why fear is loudest when you're closest to your breakthrough. It senses it, it smells it, it panics, because fear knows if you take one more step forward, you'll break its grip forever. So it throws everything at you. Doubt, overthinking. What will they say? What if I fail? What if I succeed? It spins its web of hesitation, because hesitation is fear's favorite weapon. And in that pause, dreams begin to die. But hear this, fear only wins when you freeze. If you move, even slightly, even blindly, the spell breaks. Because motion shatters illusion. Fear wants stillness. It wants you passive. It wants you waiting. And every time you wait for certainty, you feed the lie that you need it. You don't. You don't need permission. You don't need approval. You don't need guarantees. You need to decide and then move. Because clarity comes from engagement, not from thought. Action carves the path. Fear only lives in theory. It dies in motion. Think about this. A lion doesn't feel safe when it hunts. A soldier doesn't wait to feel ready before charging forward. They act because that's who they are. And it's in the doing that the fear transforms into strength. You are no different. You were not built to live a life of silent suffering, hidden brilliance, and wasted fire. You were built to shake foundations. And yet, you hesitate. Why? Because fear has convinced you that if you lose, you'll be humiliated. But the truth is, Not trying is the only true humiliation. Because failure is educational, but cowardice is corrosive. It eats you from the inside out. And that's what most people are living with. Not failure, but the rot of regret. Because regret is not about what you did. It's about what you were too afraid to do. Too afraid to love deeply, to speak honestly, to start over, to dream again, to bet on yourself. So if you want to escape fear, you won't do it by running. You'll do it by standing still long enough to see through it. And when you do, here's what you'll realize. Fear is not the end. It's the beginning. It is the test, the threshold, the filter between the many who wish and the few who build. You want to build. You want to rise. Then you must understand the cost. And the cost is discomfort. The price of greatness is not comfort. It's confrontation. Confrontation with your laziness, your excuses, your pain, your story, your lies, and yes, your fear. The people who make it in this world aren't the ones without fear. They're the ones who choose growth over safety every single day. So if you feel fear, good. That means you're close. That means something is waking up inside you, a deeper truth, a higher standard, a greater purpose. And fear? It's just the final gate before you get there. So open it, kick it down, burn it if you have to. But don't stand outside the life you were meant to live. Not one more day, not one more breath. Because the longer you wait, the harder it gets to believe you ever could. And the world. The world is not waiting. It is moving, racing, changing, and it needs you. Not the you covered in caution, not the version that hides behind delays. The real you, the one with fire in your eyes and purpose in your bones. The one who remembers what it's like to dream with no ceiling. That version of you is not gone. He's buried. She's silent, but not dead. And all it takes to wake them is one decision. I will no longer obey fear. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever again. Because fear doesn't deserve your future. It never built anything. It never healed anything. It never loved anything. It only steals. And now, you steal it back. You steal it back. Every moment, every breath, every dream that fear tried to bury. Because you don't owe fear your future. You owe your future, your fight. And no matter what anyone told you, no matter who doubted you, abandoned you, overlooked you, you are not broken. You are just buried. Buried beneath the lies, the layers, the labels. But underneath it all, the fire is still there. And fear knows it. That's why it's loud. That's why it shows up every time you try to rise. Because fear doesn't attack weakness. It attacks potential. If you had nothing in you, fear would leave you alone. But you do. You have greatness in you. You have genius, vision, force. You have something this world has never seen before and never will again. And if you don't bring it to life, it dies with you. That book, that movement, that song, that business, that idea, that mission, they are all waiting behind the wall called fear. And that wall isn't real. It's made of thoughts. It's made of stories. It's made of everything you've believed about what's safe. But safety is the slow death. It's the anesthesia that numbs your soul while the clock runs out. And you didn't come here to sleep. You came here to awaken, to rise, to walk through the fire and emerge as who you were always meant to be. That path, it's not paved, it's not guaranteed, it's not clean, it's filled with rejection, silence, doubt, delay, failure, but it's also filled with revelation, with strength, with transformation, And with moments so electric, they'll make your past look like a distant echo. Because once you decide to face fear, not escape it, not ignore it, but face it, you unlock something no one can give you and no one can take from you. Power. Real power. Not control over others, but control over yourself. The power to choose your response. The power to move in the presence of chaos. The power to keep building when everything says stop. And that kind of power, it comes from one place only. Decision. Not talent, not timing, not luck. Just a decision. I will no longer let fear lead my life. Say it again. I will no longer let fear lead my life. Because the truth is, fear can't be destroyed, but it can be demoted. It can ride in the car, but it doesn't touch the wheel. It doesn't choose the direction. It doesn't set the speed. It doesn't get a voice at the table. You acknowledge it, but you don't obey it. You let it speak, but you don't let it lead. Because now you lead. Now you decide. Now you move. And when you move, you become someone new. Not a version of who you were, but an entirely new creation. Because motion is transformation. Each step rewrites your identity. Each action chips away at the lie. Each decision makes you stronger, louder, more real. And before long, something changes. People notice. You speak differently. You walk differently. You show up with fire, with certainty, with presence. Not because you're fearless, but because you've wrestled fear and kept showing up anyway. And that is what makes a person unshakable. Not how loud they are, not how perfect, not how polished, but how willing. Willing to feel the fear and move, willing to fail and rise, willing to be misunderstood and speak anyway, willing to be alone and keep walking anyway, because you know who else walked alone. Every pioneer, every innovator, every leader history remembers. They were mocked, they were doubted, they were feared, but they didn't stop. They didn't surrender their future to fear, and neither will you. So write the book, start the business, pick up the phone, have the conversation, book the flight, change the habit, say the truth. Whatever it is, fear is trying to stop. Do that thing. Do it now. Do it clumsily. Do it scared. Because that's the price, and it's worth every ounce. Because on the other side of fear is not just your potential. It's your peace. And real peace doesn't come from avoiding fear. It comes from knowing you faced it and didn't flinch. It comes from walking into the fire and realizing it was never fire at all. It was fog. It was illusion. It was a story you had the power to rewrite all along. And now, you write it differently, not with trembling hands, but with unshakable resolve. Because you've remembered something most people forget. You are not here to survive your fear. You are here to conquer it. You are here to conquer it, to stare it down and say, you've had your time. You've had your say. Now I choose something else. And that choice, that sacred defiant choice, is what rewrites everything. Because fear is a storyteller, but so are you. Fear tells you, stay small. You say, I expand. Fear says, not now. You say, this moment is mine. Fear whispers, you're not enough. You roar back, watch me become more. This is not arrogance. This is not fantasy. This is you reclaiming authorship of your own life. You've let fear narrate your days for too long, letting it determine what's possible, what's practical, what's safe. But now, you become the narrator. And the story you tell from this moment forward must be bigger than your fear. Not someday. Not when you're ready. Now. Because there is no future without this moment. There is no breakthrough without this battle. And this battle, this war against fear, is the one every great soul must fight. This is your proving ground. This is your legend in the making. You want to be remembered? You want to leave a mark? Then stop shrinking to fit a world that never saw you clearly in the first place. Stand, speak, building move. No one is coming to light the fire for you. No one is going to give you courage. No one is going to pick you up off the floor unless you rise. This is your life, and fear doesn't get to write your eulogy. You do. So what will it say? That you tried? Sometimes. That you waited? Often? That you stayed safe until it was too late? Or will it say, he faced down giants that lived in his own mind? She stood in front of the storm and walked through it anyway. They chose to live wide awake, no matter the cost, because that's what courage looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the refusal to let pain define you. Not the absence of risk, but the decision to carry purpose into it. And not the absence of fear, but the commitment to keep going, no matter how loud fear screams. And it will scream. Make no mistake, fear will always return. Before the next leap year, the next call, the next version of you, it will shapeshift, it will evolve, it will wear new faces and speak in new tones, but you won't be the same either. Because once you've walked through fear, you stop seeing it as a wall. You see it for what it is, a doorway to expansion, to truth, to your next chapter. You stop asking, how do I avoid fear? And you start asking, where is fear trying to keep me from going? Because wherever fear lives, your freedom lives on the other side. So go there, go straight into it. Don't circle it, don't delay it. Walk directly into it with your head high and your voice steady. And don't look back. Because the you who stays behind, that version is done. They served their purpose. They survived long enough to bring you here. But now it's time to become something new. Not because you hate who you were, but because you've outgrown them. You've evolved. And fear? Fear doesn't know what to do with someone who evolves faster than it can lie. You become untouchable, not invincible, but unshakable. And that's the person who changes things. That's the person who builds the unbuildable, who forgives the unforgivable, who climbs when there's no rope, no hand, no applause. That's the person the world waits for. And that's the person fear wants you to never meet. But now you've seen them. Now you know they exist inside you. And now you must choose. Will you bury them again? Or will you let them lead? Because once you let your courage take the wheel, you'll look back in shock at how small fear always was. You'll wonder why you ever bowed to it, why you ever gave it a vote in decisions meant for greatness. But don't waste time in regret. Use it as fuel. Let it light your path. Every second you gave to fear, you now reclaim with intention. Every breath, every heartbeat, every decision aimed at building what matters. Because now you move different. You think different. You breathe different. You've walked through the fog, and now you walk with fire. You've felt the weight, and now you walk with wings. You've heard the voice of fear, and now finally, you've chosen not to listen. And that choice, that's the one that changes everything. That choice is your rebirth. You made it not with ease, but with fire. You made it not because it was convenient, but because it was necessary. And that makes all the difference, because the world has enough people pretending they're fine. Enough people bowing to fear and calling it wisdom. Enough lives lived on mute. What it needs is you. Fully alive, fully present, fully you. Not the edited version, not the filtered version, the one who's been hiding under layers of fear for far too long. Because when fear falls, authenticity rises, and when you start living as your true self, everything changes. Not just for you, but for everyone around you. People will feel it. They'll hear it in your words, see it in your eyes, sense it in your presence. They won't know what it is at first. They'll call it confidence or charisma or energy. But what they're really seeing is freedom. The kind of freedom that only comes from someone who walked through fear and kept walking. And that kind of person, they don't follow, they lead. They don't chase approval. They command respect. They don't shrink. They expand. Because they know what it cost to become this real. They know what they had to break, what they had to leave, what they had to unlearn, and they're not going back. Once you see the game fear plays, you stop playing. You stop asking for signs. You stop begging for certainty. You stop waiting for permission. And you start creating your own momentum. You say, I don't know what's next, but I'm done standing still. I don't have all the answers, but I'm done hiding the questions. I don't feel ready, but I'm moving anyway. That is the voice of someone who has awakened, someone who doesn't just want success, but freedom. Because real success isn't money. It isn't applause. It's waking up and knowing you are no longer a prisoner to fear. It's building a life that reflects who you really are, not who fear tried to convince you to be. And yes, the world may push back. When you stop living afraid, you'll threaten those who still are. When you speak your truth, you'll expose their silence. When you rise, you'll shine a light on everything they're still running from. And some will leave, some will mock, some will whisper. But let them. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be aligned with yourself and fear. Fear will scream in the moment before you step into the light because it knows it's losing you. It knows it can't survive your conviction. It will try to remind you of who you were. It will replay every mistake, every failure, every insecurity. It will use your voice. It will try to sound like truth. But truth doesn't paralyze. Truth liberates. And the truth is this: you were never your fear. You were the one who noticed it. You were the one who questioned it. You were the one who dared to defy it. So now you rise. Not because the fear is gone, but because you've grown too large to be ruled by it. You no longer negotiate with doubt. You no longer explain yourself to fear. You walk forward, heart open, voice steady, eyes on the life you are building with every step. And with each step, you rewrite the story. You become the example, the evidence, the voice someone else needed. Because that's the gift on the other side of fear. Not just freedom, but purpose. You don't just overcome fear for yourself. You overcome it so others can watch you rise and believe they can too. You become the spark. You become the fire starter. And in a world filled with people hiding from themselves, nothing is more radical than someone who chooses to be fully seen. So be seen, be heard, be felt, even if your voice shakes, even if the room is silent, even if no one claps. Because you didn't come here for applause. You came here for impact. You came here for truth. You came here to live. And now, finally, you are. You are. You are living, not surviving, not hiding, not playing the role that made others comfortable. You are living, loud, clear, and real. And in that state, fear becomes irrelevant, not absent, irrelevant. Because you've stripped it of authority. You've taken back the wheel. You've silenced the committee in your head. You've stopped auditioning for a life you were born to lead. Now you're the one setting the tone. You're the one who walks in the room and brings certainty, not because you're the smartest, not because you have all the answers, but because you've already faced the worst, and you didn't break. And that becomes your gravity. People will ask how you did it, how you became so clear, so focused, so unstoppable. They'll ask what you read, who you followed, what strategy you used, but they'll never fully understand the truth. That the breakthrough came when you got sick of fear running the show. When you decided that your future mattered more than your comfort. When you stood in your own storm and stopped asking to be rescued. Because there's a moment that every champion, every visionary, every soul on fire reaches, a sacred moment when you realize no one is coming. And instead of it breaking you, it builds you. You stop waiting to be chosen. You stop hoping for a sign. You stop blaming what's behind you. And you say, if it's going to happen, it starts with me. That's the edge where your old life ends, where your fear-fed identity crumbles, and something unshakable begins to rise. The part of you that remembers why you were born. Not to follow, not to fear, but to forge. Forge paths, forge strength, forge a life that makes fear irrelevant. And yes, it's lonely at first. Yes, it's painful. Yes, there will be nights where you question it all. But there will also be days that feel like truth, like breath, like home. Days when you walk in your purpose and the world responds, not with ease, but with alignment, not with noise, but with clarity. And suddenly, fear is quiet because you're not listening anymore. You've tuned into something deeper, a frequency of fire, of focus, of freedom. And it doesn't speak in panic. It speaks in presence. It says, you were always this powerful. You were always this capable. You were always this free. You just had to remember. And that remembering, that awakening, changes everything. You no longer chase. You become. You no longer seek validation. You embody value. You no longer wait to feel brave. You act from your why and let courage meet you on the way. And here's the most dangerous thing you'll ever do. You stop apologizing for who you are. You stop shrinking so others don't feel insecure. You stop censoring your fire. You stop editing your truth, because the world doesn't need more quiet souls trying to blend in. It needs more warriors of light, more architects of change, more people who looked fear in the eye and said, I'm not scared of you anymore. That doesn't mean fear disappears. It just means it no longer decides. And that is liberation. Not the kind found in books, not the kind found in mantras or morning routines, but the kind that comes from walking barefoot into the unknown with nothing but your heartbeat and a decision. The decision to live real, live brave, live now. And from that place, nothing is unreachable. From that place, you are unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because you've become stronger than your excuses, more loyal to your calling than your comfort, more in love with your vision than your fears. Because let's be honest, you weren't afraid of failure. You were afraid of what success would require of you. You were afraid of the version of you that would have to emerge. The discipline, the boundaries, the clarity, the power. But now you're not. Now you welcome it. Now you demand it. Because if fear no longer leads, then greatness can. And that is the truth fear never wanted you to discover. That you were always more powerful than it. That it only ruled because you believed it did. But belief is a tool. And now you use it differently. You aim it, sharpen it, forge it into certainty. And from that certainty, you create the kind of life that silence used to beg for. You become the version of yourself you once thought was a fantasy, not because fear left, but because you did. You walked away from the version of yourself that let fear write the story. And now, you're writing your own. Now you're writing your own story. One line at a time. One step at a time. One battle at a time. Not for applause. Not for recognition. But for alignment. Because nothing feels better than knowing your actions match your soul. And fear? Fear can't exist in that kind of truth. It fades where alignment lives. It dissolves when you stop betraying your own voice. It weakens the moment you start honoring who you are, not who you were told to be. That's the shift, not dramatic, not loud, but powerful beyond measure. The shift from external to internal, from reaction to creation, from what if I fail, to what if I rise? Because once you make that shift, life becomes less about avoidance and more about alignment. You stop managing fear. You start mastering focus. You stop chasing safety. You start choosing sovereignty. And that makes you dangerous to the status quo. Because the world has been run by fear for far too long. Fear of change. Fear of truth. Fear of those who can't be manipulated. But now, you don't move for fear. You move for purpose. You speak not to be liked, but to be clear. You create not to be safe, but to serve. And in doing so, you become something rare. Not a copy, not a product of fear-based culture, but a force, a builder, a presence. You stop waiting for a call and start answering one. The call that was placed on your life before the world taught you how to be afraid. And the beauty of that call? It doesn't care how long it took you to answer. It doesn't shame you for the years you hesitated. It simply says, welcome back. Because it never left. It waited, through your excuses, through your distractions, through your fear. And now, you're finally here. You can feel it. The shift in breath. The steady rhythm of someone who knows they're walking the right road. Not the easy one, but the right one. And that's all that ever mattered. You weren't built for comfort. You were built for contribution. You weren't made to watch the clock. You were made to move mountains. But fear kept telling you to be realistic, to play small, to stay still. And you listened until now. Now you've learned. Fear is not wisdom. Caution is not clarity. Doubt is not discernment. Now you lead with something deeper, with vision, with faith, with truth. Because when you stop following fear, you start following the path that was carved for you. Not copied, not inherited, created. And this path, it has your name on it. No one else can walk it. No one else can carry what you're here to deliver. That's why fear tried so hard to stop you. Because it knew, if you ever woke up, nothing could stop you. And now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Now that you've felt your power, you can't pretend to be powerless. Now that you've tasted purpose, you'll never be satisfied with comfort again. You're done pretending, done explaining, done negotiating with fear. Now, you execute. Now, you show up. Now, you build. Even when the voice comes back. Even when the doubt creeps in. Even when fear tries one more time to whisper, "Are you sure?" You'll smile. Not because the voice is gone, but because you recognize it. And this time, you don't respond with retreat. You respond with action. You show fear your progress. You show it the bridges you've burned, the walls you've climbed, the parts of you that are no longer available for sabotage. And when fear asks, "Who do you think you are?" you answer without hesitation, "I am the one you couldn't break. I am the one who kept moving. I am the one who turned pain into power. I am the one who stopped waiting and started becoming. I am the one who stopped waiting and started becoming." Because waiting is just fear dressed as patience, and I've waited long enough. Waited for clarity, waited for courage, waited for timing, validation, alignment, perfection. All the lies fear sells in the name of delay. But nothing changes in the waiting. Clarity doesn't come from stillness. It comes from movement, from momentum, from failing forward. That's what fear never told you. That motion is the cure. That progress is the antidote. That action is the gateway to power. It told you to sit still, to overthink, to analyze every step until the opportunity passed and regret became your companion. But now you know better. Now you understand. You don't get to feel ready. You get to decide. And decisions are what transform people, not their upbringing, not their resources, not their circumstances. Decisions. The decision to rise when others sit, to speak when silence is safe, to begin again after breaking, to move when every voice says, "Wait." Because every legend you've ever admired, every great soul you've ever studied, was born from a moment like this. A moment where fear said, "Stop." And they said, "No." No to the excuses. No to the delay. No to the inherited limitations. That's how revolutions start, quietly, inside someone's chest. A war between the life they were told to live and the one they were born to build. And when they choose to build, the world changes, not instantly, not without resistance, but permanently. Because the most powerful thing on earth is a human being who has made peace with fear and still chooses forward. That kind of person, they walk differently, they lead differently, they love differently. Not because they've never felt fear, but because they've mastered the art of not obeying it. And that mastery, it begins with remembering one truth. Fear is a compass. The direction it points, that's where your growth lives. The bigger the fear, the greater the opportunity. So don't run from it. Run toward it. If your dream scares you, good. If your goal makes you nervous, perfect. If your calling feels too big, now we're talking. Because fear doesn't visit the unimportant. It shows up only when something matters. It's the alarm bell for destiny, and you've spent enough time hitting snooze. Now, you rise. Not because it's easy, but because it's time. Time to stop playing defense in your own story. Time to stop giving fear the pen. Time to start living like your future is watching, because it is. 10 years from now, a version of you is alive. The only question is, did fear raise them, or did you? Did fear keep them stuck, small, silent? Or did you fight for them today with every ounce of your will? Because the life you want isn't hiding. It's just waiting for your courage to catch up. And courage is a decision you make daily. You wake up and choose it, even when it's heavy. You walk into rooms with it, even when your legs shake. You speak through it, even when your voice cracks. Because that's what real courage looks like. Not the absence of fear, but defiance in the face of it. A soul that stands up and says, "You don't own me anymore. You don't own my time. You don't own my talent. You don't own my relationships, my creativity, my mission. I am done being your tenant. I am done building your kingdom. Today, I choose mine. And from this moment on, everything shifts. The way you walk, the way you think, the way you breathe when no one's watching. Because you're no longer operating from fear. You're operating from fire, from purpose, from clarity, from the inner knowing that no matter what comes, you have already won because you started. And that is where greatness lives. Not at the finish line, but in the beginning, in the decision, in the daring,